there's a funny psychological phenomenon in that there is a will, I think, on the viewer's part, and I partly include myself in that, but I'm not really. I'm behind the scenes on this film, but you will continue to make a film seem a certain way, even in defiance of the facts on the ground. The equivalent would be if you had a musical instrument and you slightly detuned that instrument. You can hear that sound, and even though it's slightly going off key, you will, in your mind, say, no, that it's the right key, until there comes a snap point and you say, no, it's out of tune, and then you suddenly become aware of the fact that it's out of tune. So we as filmmakers are bending this film progressively, but the experience of watching the film is a more sudden snap, when your tolerance level, in a way, reaches the end and you say, okay, I can't, it's not a normal film anymore. And wherever that is dependent on who you are and what your expectations are and how many times you've seen the film. And it's a failing on our part, in the sense that we could see that it was getting strange. Our intention was to veer it progressively, but in the trajectory of watching the film, the urge is to keep the keel planted and to keep the boat going in a straight line until you can't anymore. So it's I don't think it is fundamentally a function of the fact that there's a different editor there.
You had quite a lot of control over the Redux version, didn't you? That was
Yes. Yeah, there is a longer version of this film that we did in the year 2000, which includes scenes that were cut out of this version, which you saw, which is the version, it's kind of the classic version of Apocalypse Now that was made in 1979.
the gentleman from the microphone.
Yeah, my question was actually that same, relating to the same issue that man just mentioned, which is a rather foolish question.
I do apologise.
That's fine, I just thought it was something interesting. Are you a Redux or original man?
Can you repeat the question?
It's the question is, am I an original or a Redux person? Having worked on both, the message is sort of scrambled. I guess if you put a gun to my head, I would go with the original, just because that was the original pulse on it. We were constrained in making the original version, not by a studio. Francis had Final Cut. He owned the negative and still owns the negative on it. It's not. He leased it to the studio to release for a period of years, and then it reverted to him, and that was the financial arrangement. But we and he certainly were aware that there is, in exhibition, theatrical exhibition, there's a point around 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 25 minutes. If the film is longer than that, you lose one whole screening a day. And that makes a severe cut in the amount of money the film makes. So this version is poised at that break point, and that was the box that we knew we had to fit the film into. And Redux is a whole other discussion, which I think would probably take up too much time here. But the Redux film is more indicative of the script that Francis went to the Philippines to shoot.
Just on the hand.
Yes, thanks. The Martin Sheen narration, how much of that was there in the beginning of the script, and to what extent was it added later in post-production to help the narrative?
The narration was in the original script. In fact, the script that Francis went to the Philippines to shoot had narration in it. When I came onto the film in 1977, I was told, Francis told me, the editors told me, that, no, the narration has been dropped. And I thought, well, okay. And then they said, and the film's coming out in December. And I thought, there's no way that we can get there. There is certainly no way that we can get there if there is no narration, because we would have to, this is a script written with narration, we would have to invent another way for the film telling us certain information about this enigmatic character who doesn't do anything. That's the Willard, it's part of the problem with the Harvey Keitel character is that Harvey, very good actor, and when I heard back in 1975, 76 that he had been cast, I thought, great, Willard is an assassin, and Harvey Keitel is believable as an assassin. The problem is that Harvey is very good at acting, action, doing things, but this part is a reacting part. Willard is the lens through which you see this war as presented in the film, and on a basic biological level, you need an actor who has big eyes to make that really work. And Harvey's eyes are very thin, and you are just waiting for him to do something, and he doesn't do anything, and so the character doesn't do anything, and so there was an inherently deep conflict there. I veered off, and what was the question? Oh, the narration. So I put narration in myself. I had been on Julia, the Fred Zinnemann film, which had narration, and so I was used to a film with narration, Jane Fonda narrating that film. So I grabbed the old narration and grabbed a microphone and started recording the narration myself, and I pitched this to Francis and the other editors, and I said, it's got to have narration. And everyone sort of shuffled and said, well, okay, let's put narration in it. So I'm the guilty party there for reintroducing the narration, and then everyone got on board, and Michael Hare, who had written Dispatches, which was very influential in the writing of this film, came on board, and he wrote the narration that you hear.
Is it true about 80% of the dialogue was re-recorded in post as well?
Yes, everything, the actor's dialogue, except for the briefing scene at the beginning with the general and the Marlon Brando scene at the end, is all ADR. It's all post-sync dialogue, because Francis had intentionally and very wisely, I think, decided that those were real helicopters. He didn't want to do process shooting or any kind. So that was Robert Duvall, big star, all the other actors actually up in the air in the middle of all this chaos, flying this helicopter. And the boat itself is a real boat. That's a real motor, and Albert Hall, the chief, is actually driving the boat. And so this diesel engine was exposed. So it meant that if you heard the original tracks, you could just hear this kind of scratchy indication of what the dialogue was. So we had to spend months doing ADR and replacing everything.
It's quite amazing to consider that Robert Duvall appears. I never knew that until researching this. I assumed he was on set because it sounds so incredible and horsey and live.
Yeah, it applies. They did a great job.
We've got a question over here.
Yeah, hi. Obviously you have a history of sound and picture editing. Do you have a preference? And do you think one
The history of what?
of sound editing and picture
Yeah.
editing? Do you have a preference?
No, I love them both. Mixing, sound editing, picture editing, it's kind of all a big ball to me. They're different sides of the same coin. It's
Do you think they inform
a different way of giving an X-ray vision of what it is, the story that you're trying to tell.
We've got a question over here, Nicole.
Thanks so much. In a similar vein, I've watched this film numerous times, but tonight with the kind of cinema sound, I felt that the sound design and kind of the song choice really added an extra dimension to the film. Did you feel that choice and the kind of the way you edited around that, or with that added to the kind of feel and the dynamic of the film, or how do you feel around that?
Yeah, no, I'm in a sense, when I'm editing a film, I'm like a quarterback and a wide receiver at the same time. As a film editor, I can toss the football downfield to myself in a later incarnation, knowing that, well, I'm going to leave this moment over to sound, and know that it can land, that I can catch it at the other end in sound. So I'm always kind of thinking double thoughts as I work with the picture. One of my rules of thumb, though, is never edit to music. I love music when it's appropriate and in the right relationship to picture and judicious. It can easily be overused, but I just personally like to allow the picture and the dialogue to mature on their own, to acquire their own rhythm before introducing the other side of the coin, the music. And then it's a question of having an intuition about what the right music might be and how it can possibly line up with images that are mature enough to take being married to sound. If you introduce the music too soon, it has a destabilizing effect, I think, on both the music and the picture.
Gentleman there with the microphone.
Yeah, hi. When the cut was locked, were you 100% happy with it? And did you have any idea that any sense that it would turn out into the enduring masterpiece that it is?
Well, it went on so long. It was never locked exactly. Of course, we stopped at a certain point, but there was not a moment where we said, okay, now it's locked, and now we're going to do the sound. Those things were going on at the same time. Each was informing the other. I was aware that we were all aware that this was or had the potential to be an important film because it was addressing this conflict. And at the time that this film was begun, no, let's say, serious examination of Vietnam had been committed to film. The film took so long to make that things like Deer Hunter came out before it, but they had started after it. So we all felt a deep obligation to get it right, whatever that means. Of course, you have to be true to the film itself, and the film does go in very strange places. But I was eager to follow the film in those directions.
So I can ask you questions all night, but unfortunately we're getting the waves, so we're going to have to call it that. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your time. In DocFest called Particle Fever, which is shown tomorrow at 3:30 here, and then you're doing your masterclass, which is from the Godfather to the God Particle, and all in between, which is in the Crucible on Saturday morning. So I heartily encourage you, and hopefully we'll get more questions then. For the time being, sir, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.